There.
There we go. All right. Thank you for thinking that. The reading this morning is from the Christian Scriptures, the book of Romans 8. Some of the the hard ones, but this is 38 and 39.
Okay.
For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God, or good, or the quantum field, or whatever you define it as. So in the decades that I've been a public speaker, I was actually a Toastmaster in my 30s, and a message bringer. I can only think of 3 times that I have intentionally waded into deep waters with the topic that I felt led to bring. And so you should consider yourselves warned that this is the 3rd time. So it's a rare event. I think it's worth the risk to swim with all of you in deep waters. We're not going to trouble the waters. We're not going to muddy them. We're just going to swim in them for a little while. The waters that I'm talking about are what Socrates wrote about when he said, "These are surely the hardest of times." They're the same waters that Thomas Paine, an English immigrant to this continent, an outspoken political writer, and a birthright friend, wrote about as the revolution against British control was floundering in 1776. He wrote, "These are the times that try men's souls." And I would guarantee you that they tried women's souls as well. Given the span of time between these 2 quotations, it's apparent that hard times, challenging times, are an inherent part of the human condition. The waters I'm wading into today are almost, maybe, definitely forbidden territory when it comes to pastoral messages. The waters, this topic, is politics. But y'all also know me well enough to know that politics is just the diving board into the waters that I want to bring for your consideration. But for me, last week's election cannot be ignored. In fact, a recent survey of thousands of voters by the American Psychology Association indicated that 7 out of 10 voters experienced the election as a significant source of stress. That's their word. That was before, during, and after they voted. And more than half of those people expressed fear of resulting violence and the end of democracy. The APA also reports that demands for mental health care continue to skyrocket. And that was confirmed by several counselors, coaches, and clergy that I spoke with over the past week and a half, that they're getting calls by the dozens of for requesting mental health care from new clients. So the current political situation is a big deal. It affects a majority of people deeply, including many of us here, regardless of the candidate you voted for. I know that some in our community may have been celebrating for the past week and a half. As New Garden friend Loy Newby used to remind us often at New Garden, you can be a Quaker and a Republican at the same time. And that was many years ago. If you know Loy, you love him. You might be feeling grateful for the election results, or at the very least relieved. And at this point, you may find yourself feeling like Gumby, if anybody remembers that animated character that could be stretched in all directions, because you've tried to connect with friends and family and co-workers who didn't share your gratitude or your relief. I would be downright negligent, I think, as a pastoral minister, though, if I didn't acknowledge the broad range of emotions that those on the flip side of this political dichotomy have experienced. Some have felt shock, fear, even outrage. Others have felt dazed, despair, and hopelessness. I will admit to you that I have felt all of that and more, especially given the reality that nearly 900 federal protections and rights were afforded Tracy and me with the passage of the National Marriage Equality Act just 9 years ago. 9 years out of 21 years together. The survival of that act seems fragile at this point. Safety for invisible minorities like Tracy and I, and safety for minorities whose status of minority is quite apparent, could be non-existent if discrimination against minorities is legalized under the First Amendment rights as it has already been proposed. And these are just two of the countless possibilities millions of Americans are facing with the incoming administration. It literally took preparing this message for me to cool my spirit and to take a step back from the humanness of this divisive situation. I was dysregulated, if you know psychological terms, for probably 3 days. I couldn't come to center. I kept searching for a pathway out, or at least one that doesn't expect any of us to walk on a razor's edge, or on eggshells, or on a warpath. We Americans simply cannot continue to live with ongoing rancor and derision for another 4 years. It turned out that my search led me back to wisdom that has been embedded in my own healing path over the past 11 months. That healing process calls for just 3 things: a soft gaze, soft knees, and a soft heart. Believe it or not, soft gaze is an actual clinical term. When you're looking at something with a soft gaze, or what we would call soft eyes, have you ever heard that phrase? It triggers your central nervous system to relax. Just how you look at something. You're in a state of what is called rest and digest. Everything that's supposed to happen in your body's happening. You're more aware of what's around you and within you from a calm state with soft eyes. On the other side, a hard gaze engages the central nervous system, fight or flight. In psychology, it's what's called the weapon focus effect. Because of trauma, past, present, or perceived, a person becomes hyper-focused, and they're always looking for what danger might be lurking around the corner. It's like your dukes are up. You're ready for whatever's coming. You don't know, but you're ready.
Tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision, but it's called weapon focus because you're looking for the danger. What happens with hard gaze is that the brain just dispenses with anything that is not required, which means the function of most of your body. It reserves the oxygen for what's happening. And that includes the breath and digestion. And so when your body and your spirit are tied in knots, have you ever been in a meeting that felt that way? You're more likely to be stressed. And then as a result, you overreact to situations. But there's a grace and a peace that comes with soft eyes. I discovered after I was told, oh, you have a hard gaze. After I've done soft gaze exercises, which might be looking out a window and just seeing how much of what you can see without looking at it. Look straight ahead, but what's around you. Solving a word search puzzle without looking for the word, but just looking at the puzzle is a soft gaze. I found that after I'd done them, I was more patient. I tended to let off the gas pedal, literally and figuratively, and I was more willing to let people off the hook. Soft eyes take our bodies and our minds and our spirits out of duress and drama. So a soft eye practice can begin as simply as starting wherever you are, and just take the time to pause and feel and breathe. Feel what you're feeling. If you're dazed, feel dazed and just breathe. And if that's all you can do, do it again. Pause, feel, and breathe. And you continue that as long until you can begin to look around with soft eyes. You've got oxygen flowing. Your body's got the cue to relax. And to keep our gaze on the world soft in the next weeks and months coming up, I consider some type of daily practice to be an essential tool. And if I could, I would make it a requirement. We'd have star charts for your daily practice. Create a list of, while you're sane and breathing, create a list of what feeds your spirit. Like walking in nature. Y'all reminded me, I have a tree I call the grandmother tree. When we first moved into our house and the inspector comes to look at the house, he's like, looks like that tree's going to have to come down. It's bending into the roof. It's like, no, it looks like that roof's going to have to move. I call it the grandmother tree. And sitting at the base of the grandmother tree, she hums to me. So walking or sitting in nature or writing in your journal, listening to music or singing or dancing or screaming in your car, or maybe some of screaming is singing, depending on your voice. But whatever your list is, do at least one thing from that list every day. That's your daily practice. You don't have to and check out. You just have to find a daily practice. Begin from within and cultivate a regular inner practice to maintain that soft gaze on the world. The next step in my healing process is soft knees. That term comes from an observation my neurophysical therapist made as he watched me do a balance exercise. He asked me, are you aware that you stand with your knees locked backwards? I probably stand like that now. I'm like, oh yeah. My sisters and I developed that habit early in life. physically bracing our bodies for whatever trauma was next. And just as a hard gaze anticipates danger, so do locked knees stiffen against the threat of what's unknown. You don't know, so you just got to be ready. Back to Dukes Up. It's a tough way to grow up, but as adults, we all know life is full of unknowns. It's just foundational to being alive. Oh, I didn't know that there was a detour on the road, or I didn't know that I was low on gas. We always live with the unknown, big and little unknowns. I think the most dreaded unknown is, what's for supper? And the most unanswerable unknown is, what is the meaning of life? We grow up learning that knowing equates to safety because we look to an outside authority to have answers for us. And if we don't know, we're in trouble as kids. But some of us don't outgrow that need for some outer authority for the certainty and for the answers. We look to them. And to not know has us feel inadequate and shamed. Everybody remember a time that the teacher called on you and you didn't know the answer? And the shame that had with it. Rather than admitting we don't know, we play the blame game. We look for someone else to hold responsible for our sense of responsibility. When we experience the unexpected and the unknown so often, like recent times, it seems like it's every hour, what's new now, we feel off balance. We brace our bodies and our spirits in an effort to be prepared rather than to relax and feel safe, to move calmly into the unknown. So staying calm in the face of the unknown, I think that's something we Quakers ought to be really good at it. We know that true authority doesn't come from outside of us. It's a product of our own inner teacher. Its deep wisdom helps us restabilize when we find ourselves off kilter and out of sorts. Accessing that inner guidance makes clear the specific path that is ours to take. And yet again, it's a reason for cultivating a daily practice. How can you know what your path is if you don't look for the signs? So to relax your stance and soften your knees against the unknown, it's helpful to get down to the brass tacks of what do you truly value? What are your top principles in your life? Not what were they 5 or 10 years ago. What are they right now? So I have a list of over 300 core values that I'm happy to share with you, just so you can make sure you didn't omit something that was really important. There are nuances in this list. As you develop a list of your own core values, let me know. Once you've chosen the most vital principles that guide your life, explore how well does your life line up with your values. I scored really high on health and well-being one time when I did this list with my students. But I looked at the amount of time I spent on health and well-being. It's like, uh-oh. But so look it over. Examine the activities, the commitments, the relationships that you maintain out of obligation or out of habit when they have nothing to do with the best of who you want to be. Amp up the activities you value, but maybe you're neglecting. Like, I love to play the piano, but how I have to dust it off every time I play it. And by doing that, you'll have a clearer picture of maybe something you want to add that best matches your values and is worthy of your time, because you are worth it. Know and do what feeds your spirit. The next step in softening your knees is to shore up your personal and professional boundaries. Pay attention to who, to whom, to when, to where your boundaries are diminished. Where are you leaking energy because of a lack of boundaries? Strengthening a boundary could be as easy as turning off the nightly news or learning to speak your needs clearly, confidently, and kindly. And lastly, my friends, is the hardest advice of all, and that's to keep a soft heart. The American author and activist Valerie Carr says, if we are to truly love ourselves, if we're to keep a soft heart, we must breathe through the fire of pain and refuse to let it harden into hate. We cannot let the ongoing acrimony bring us to bitterness. We're better than that. We humans, I believe, are entering an era where competition and power over are fighting for dominance and taking their last gasp of air. The future belongs to those who adapt, those who connect, those who collaborate with others, not dominate. Those who are willing to be of service in some way to life in this universe or life on this planet Earth. We all saw that to be true with the tragedies that resulted from Hurricane Helene. The governmental powers that be couldn't hold a candle to the brilliant lights of we the people, who, when it came to rescuing and restoring countless lives. It wasn't big industry. It wasn't giant conglomerates that saved the day. It was, and it continues to be, thousands of people like you and me who give whatever we can to make a difference in the lives of others. I have friends who are still going to the mountains to volunteer every other weekend or on their day off. Each of us can be a superhero every day by taking time to smile, hold the door for a stranger. I think it's fun to smile at people in the car beside of me and watch their reactions. They don't know how to handle it. Do something even that's kind that goes unnoticed, like pick up the straw and the straw paper off the sidewalk. We can make a big difference when we stop our yapping and actually listen to the other person. What are they saying? What are they not saying? Keeping a soft heart can also be achieved by doing something of the opposite. Sometimes we just got to take our capes off and sit a spell. Take a nap, eat a cookie, read a book. We have to take that list of values we're going to write and decide exactly what is in the scope of my ability to address in this moment. And I say to tired friends, honey, all you gotta do is just pray. In the African American church, the women will say, sometimes I hold up my hand and I pray. And sometimes all I can do is just hold up my hand. Keeping a soft heart. We wouldn't have known 100 years ago that there was a big earthquake in Cuba this week. We wouldn't have known maybe for days or weeks or if ever. But nowadays, tragedies from around the world are streamed into our homes and into our hearts 24/7 if we let it. We cannot save the whole world. And yet, if we're not activated and stressed about what's next, what can we save, we feel guilty. Drag out that old t-shirt if you still have it that reminds you, think globally, act locally. What difference can you make realistically today or next week or next month or next year? Sometimes the best difference you can make is to love yourself so well that you are replenished enough to love others next. The late great American guru, I call him, Ram Dass, often spoke of the 3 levels of being a human. The first level's body. That describes facts about us as a human. I was born this date, I'm this tall, my family name is this, I live on whatever street, I drive or whatever. The second level is mind. That's what you've learned in life. It's your memories, it's your beliefs, it's your political affiliations. How many of you know what your Myers-Briggs type is or your Enneagram? That's mind. The third level of being is spirit. Spirit is the essence of who we are as a being. It's what we brought with us when we came to this existence. Spirit's our natural state, and it's where our soft gaze, our soft knees, our soft heart can best serve humanity. When we live solely from the levels of the mind and the body, we're sleepwalking through life. We're asleep to the beauty and the magnificence of all creation. To me, spirit is the place where the ego power of body and mind can dissolve. When we learn to live in the spirit and to connect with each other's spirits, not their ego mind and their ego body, and we do it through soft eyes and soft knees and a soft heart, we can stay awake to the abundance of love rather than all this ugliness. Living from spirit, there is nothing that can or will separate us from the oneness of love. I want to end with an excerpt from a poem from one of my favorite poets, Sufi poet Rumi. And the poem is A Great Wagon, but you'll recognize this excerpt. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase the other doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where these two worlds touch. The door is wide and round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Amen.